Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the City of Oxnard Planning Commission for Thursday, February 6, 2025. This meeting will come to order at 6:02 p.m. The public may view the meeting from home on the city's website, Spectrum Channel 10, Frontier Channel 35, or on the city's YouTube website. To participate in the meeting, the public may provide comments to the Planning Commission via email at planning@oxnard.org no later than 3 p.m. on the day of the meeting, or through the city's website at oxnard.org/city-meetings, or call the Planning Division office. Additionally, those wishing to speak can dial the phone number listed at the bottom of the screen, follow the instructions to access the meeting, and press star 9 to raise your hand, indicating your intention to speak on the agenda item being discussed. Madam Secretary, can we please have the roll call?
Chair Rejo.
Present.
Commissioner Dr. Lopez.
Here.
Commissioner Nash.
Present.
Commissioner Schulke.
Present.
Vice Chair Dr. Stewart, Commissioner Connolly, and Commissioner Zielsdorf are absent. We have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. We will now move on to the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Pearson, will you kindly lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Thank you, Mr. Pearson. We'll now move on to agenda item C, public comments on items not on the agenda. At this time, a person may address the Planning Commission on matters within the jurisdiction of the Planning Commission, including information consent items and any time not appearing on the agenda. The Planning Commission cannot take action on any item presented during public comments that is not on the agenda, and such item may only be referred to the Commission Secretary. Persons wishing to speak on public hearing items should do so at the time of the public hearing. Madam Secretary, are there any public comments for items not on the agenda?
No, Chair, there are none.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to the consent agenda. There are two items for approval. D1, the approval of the minutes for November 21, 2024, and D2, December 5, 2024. If there's no objection, we'll take these both at the same time. Are there any corrections or any other comments on the minutes that were distributed before? Seeing and hearing no corrections, a motion is in order.
Move to approve by Nash.
Moved by Commissioner Nash, seconded by Commissioner Schulke. Any deliberation on the motion? Madam Secretary, can we have the roll call, please?
Commissioner Nash.
Aye.
Commissioner Schulke.
Aye.
Commissioner Dr. Lopez.
Aye.
Chair Arejo.
Aye.
This motion passes.
Thank you. We'll move on to Section E, ex parte declarations for public hearing items. Please state any ex parte declarations, if any. I'll move across the dais. Commissioner Dr. Lopez.
None, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Nash.
None, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Schulke.
None, thank you.
Thank you, and none for myself. Next is Section F, public hearing. Agenda item F.1 on 5305 Saviors Road Duplex, Planning and Zoning Permit number 24-540-03, Plan Development Permit, property located at 5305 Saviors Road, a request for approval of a plan development permit for the construction of a new 3,326 square foot two-story duplex building consisting of two 1,663 square foot attached two-story units and a 990 square foot detached four-car garage with a detached 990 square foot ADU above the garage on a 5662 square foot vacant parcel located at 5305 Saviors Road within the garden apartment plan development zone. The project is exempt from environmental review pursuant to Section 15303, new construction of small structures, Class 3 of CEQA guidelines, filed by Manuel Lopez on behalf of property owner Carlos Lopez, Simi Valley, City Staff Daniel Hoke, Associate Planner. At this time, per Measure M, a staff presentation has been pre-recorded and the link has been posted to YouTube. Per previously approved standing rules, staff can provide a brief summary of the pre-recorded presentation in addition to another analysis at this time. Mr. Hoke.
Yes, thank you, Chair Rejo. I just have one thing to add, and that is I got a question from the commissioners beforehand about condition 57, which is regarding the architectural features. and if that was included on the renderings that are included in the packet. The renderings do not include architectural features that we've conditioned. It's something that we condition knowing that in the building permit process it would be addressed.
Thank you for that. We'll have the applicant present at this time if there is any. If the applicant is here in real life or on Zoom. Okay, thank you. And you have 15 minutes. You don't have to use all of it, and you can begin when ready.
Thank you. Appreciate you guys' time. We actually don't have a presentation, but we are available to answer any questions or concerns.
Thank you very much. And your name for?
My name is Emmanuel Lopez.
Emmanuel Lopez. Mr. Lopez, thank you very much. At this time, I'm going to ask members of the commission for questions of either the applicant or the staff. Commission. Commissioner Nash.
Thank you, Chair. Could you give me some more clarification on what will be included under condition number 57?
Yeah, so our intention there in discussions with our designer, it's vinyl louvres, shutters, just to provide some architectural detail, as well as some foam molding for the stucco, just so it's not a flat surface. And that's going to be on the street-facing sides of the duplex and the ADU garage building.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any others from the commission? Seeing and hearing none, we'll proceed with public comment. Madam Secretary, is there any public comment?
No, Chair.
Thank you. Any closing remarks from staff?
I have nothing to add at this time. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. The public hearing is now closed, and we'll move on to deliberation. Commission. I think for myself, I see that everything with at least this permit individually looks like it has met all the qualifications or criteria that's needed. It's a vacant lot, and it seems that the area could use it, and it seems in keeping with the rest of the neighborhood. Any others from the commission? And if not, a motion is in order. Commissioner Dr. Lopez.
I'm happy to move this recommended action.
Thank you. It has been moved to find the project exempt from environmental review pursuant to the CEQA guidelines, section 15303, and adopt resolution 2025-XX approving planning and zoning permit number 24-540-03, subject to certain findings and conditions. Is there a second?
Second, Chair.
Seconded by Commissioner Schuelke. Any deliberation on the motion before us? Seeing and hearing none, Madam Secretary, can we have the roll call, please?
Commissioner Dr. Lopez,
Aye.
Commissioner Schuelke,
Aye.
Commissioner Nash,
Aye.
Chair Arejo.
Aye.
This motion passes.
Thank you very much. Moving on to F2, 5309 Saviors Road Duplex, planning and zoning permit number 24-540-04, property located at 5309 Saviors Road, a request for approval of a planned development permit for the construction of a new 3,326 square foot two-story duplex building consisting of two 1,663 square foot attached two-story units and a 990 square foot detached four-car garage with a detached 990 square foot ADU above the garage on a 5662 square foot vacant parcel located at 5309 Saviors Road within the Garden Apartment Plan Development Zone. This project is exempt from environmental review pursuant to section 15303, new construction of small structures, class 3 of CEQA guidelines filed by Emmanuel Lopez on behalf of property owner Carlos Lopez, City Staff Daniel Hoke. Per Measure M, a staff presentation has been pre-recorded and the link has been posted to YouTube. Per previously approved standing rules, staff can provide a brief summary of the pre-recorded presentation in addition to other analysis at this time. Mr. Hoke.
Yes, thank you. Just for clarity, this is the same project as it is on the adjacent lot. The lot is even the same dimensions, so it's theoretically exactly the same, all the same conditions, same dimensions and everything.
Thank you very much. If the applicant is present, Mr. Lopez, you have 15 minutes.
Thank you. Again, no presentation, but any questions or concerns, we're happy to answer.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lopez. At this time, members may ask questions of the applicant and staff. Commission. One for myself. Is there a reason, I get that it's on different parcels, but is that the only reason, to staff, sorry. Is that the only reason that we're hearing these as 3 separate projects?
Correct. Because each one is an individual property, they all, I believe, need to have individual permits.
Acknowledged. Thank you very much. Any others from the commission at this time? Commissioner Nash.
I'm ready to move the recommended action.
Before we go there, we're going to go to public comment first. Madam Secretary, is there any public comment?
No, Chair.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Are there any closing remarks from staff?
I have nothing to add.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The public hearing is now closed, and we'll move on to deliberation. With the motion by Commissioner Nash that we find the project exempt from environmental review pursuant to CEQA Guidelines Section 15303, new construction, and adopt Resolution 2025-XX approving planning and zoning permit number 24-540-04, plan development permit, subject to certain findings and conditions. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Dr. Lopez. Any deliberation on the motion before us? Seeing and hearing none. Madam Secretary, Commissioner Dr. Lopez.
More of a comment than a deliberation, but just happy that these 2 empty parcels are being developed to add to the much-needed housing stock. And so, yeah.
Thank you, Commissioner Dr. Lopez. Commissioner Nash? Thank you. Seeing and hearing none, Madam Secretary, can we have the roll call, please?
Commissioner Nash?
Aye.
Commissioner Dr. Lopez?
Aye.
Commissioner Schuelke?
Aye.
Chair Arejo?
Aye.
This motion passes.
Thank you. Moving on to F3, 5313 Saviors Road duplex. Permit, planning and zoning permit number 24-540-05, plan development permit, property located at 5313 Saviors Road. A request for approval of a plan development permit for the construction of a new 3326 square foot 2-story duplex building consisting of 2 1663 square foot attached 2-story units and a 990 square foot detached 4-car garage with a detached 990 square foot ADU above the garage on a 5662 square foot vacant parcel located at 5313 Saviors Road within the garden apartment plan development zone. This project is exempt from environmental review pursuant to section 15303, new construction of small structures, class 3 of CEQA guidelines, filed by Emmanuel Lopez on behalf of property owner Carlos Lopez, city staff Daniel Hoke. Per Measure M, a staff presentation has been pre-recorded and the link has been posted to YouTube. Per previously approved standing rules, staff can provide a brief summary of the pre-recorded presentation in addition to other analysis at this time. Mr. Hoke.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. This project is also essentially the same project. All the dimensions and square footages are the same. There is slight differences with this one versus the other two, being it's a corner lot. The dimensions of the property are actually still the same. However, one is a corner that's like a radius, and there is a parkway on the side. So we do have one extra condition for this project that requires that the parkway be landscaped as the adjacent properties are, as well as a little more wording in a few of the conditions, such as the landscaping conditions that require landscaping on that frontage as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If the applicant is present at this time, you can have 15 minutes. I'm gonna assume, okay, thank you very much. And you're available if there's any public comment to respond to. At this time, members may ask questions of the applicant and staff. Commission. I'll have one question to Mr. Lopez. I was just wondering, do you intend to, even though we're just focusing on this, since this is the third of 3 items, Is your construction timeline going to be that you're going to try to just do all three at the same time, or like one at a time?
Our idea would be to do them at the same time, just with the idea that it would be a little bit more efficient with the trades coming through. A lot of that is going to end up being contingent on our financing.
Okay, thank you. That's good that you're doing it at the same time. I just wanted to confirm that. So thank you very much, Mr. Lopez. Any others from the commission at this time? Seeing and hearing none, Madam Secretary, is there any public comment for agenda item F3?
No, Chair.
Thank you. Any closing remarks from staff?
I have nothing to add, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. And the public hearing is now closed. We'll move on to deliberation. Commission. Seeing and hearing none, a motion is in order.
Chair, I'm happy to recommend this be adopted.
Thank you.
Second by Nash.
Thank you. It has been moved by Commissioner Schuelke and seconded by Commissioner Nash. The recommended action to find the project exempt from environmental review pursuant to CEQA guidelines section 15303 and adopt resolution 2025-XX approving planning and zoning permit number 24-540-05 plan development permits subject to certain findings and conditions. Is there any deliberation on the motion before us? Seeing and hearing none, Madam Secretary, can we have the roll call, please?
Commissioner Schuelke,
Aye.
Commissioner Nash,
Aye.
Commissioner Dr. Lopez,
Aye.
Chair Arejo.
Aye.
This motion passes.
Thank you very much. Congratulations to the applicant. We'll move on to agenda item F4, the Point Apartments Appeal, Planning and Zoning Permit number 23-200-01, Development Design Review, property located at 2801 North Oxnard Boulevard, appeal of the Community Development Director's approval of a development design review permit for the construction of a 546,524 square foot building comprised of 341,324 square feet of apartment building, reaching 4 stories and 280 residential units, as well as a 205,200 square foot, 5.5-story centrally located parking structure with 490 residential parking spaces on a 4.85 acre project site. The proposed project has been found to be consistent with the RPSP and FEIR number 00-03 and is therefore exempt from further environmental review pursuant to section 15162 of the CEQA guidelines. The project application was filed by Ann Walsh of Share Properties of Oxnard. The appeal was filed by Richard Drury of Lozeau Drury of Oakland, California. City staff, Daniel Hook, Associate Planner. Per Measure M, a staff presentation has been pre-recorded and the link has been posted to YouTube. Per previously approved standing rule, staff can provide a brief summary of the pre-recorded presentation in addition to other analysis at this time. Does staff have any remarks at this time?
I'm sorry, I missed that.
Oh, not at this time? Okay, thank you very much. Oh, yeah, do you have any?
I have a little bit to add before we begin.
Yes.
And a presentation, a small presentation to go, slides to go with it.
Okay, thank you. You can make that at this time, actually. Is that?
Did you say I could begin?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Yes, so from the commission, I did receive some sets of questions as well as some lengthy comment letters. So, and with this being a bit of a complex issue with CEQA, I just wanted to start out with kind of a staff summary, as well as through that summary address a lot of the questions that came in. Of course, you can ask us for further clarification later, but this should pretty much address what I received. So I put together some slides here. I just want to start off, we did get a couple questions that are maybe less directly related to the big CEQA question, so I wanted to go through those first. With the first question, that'd be, we were asked what the rent amounts for the affordable units might be. And I put together this table here up on the slides. We got this information earlier from the housing department today, and These aren't the exact numbers, because I believe they are subject to change slightly, but they should be relatively close to this. The second question would be in terms of the DA and its expiration. For this project, it is part of the main River Park DA, and that expires on October 10th, 2027. And then with that, I'll head into the main topic of the appeal. So up on the slides, I just have kind of the main points laid out, but I'll go through those now. So we want to start off by just saying that after the comment letters and after thorough assessment of the project, we do still decisively conclude that the CEQA for the Point Apartments is completely adequate. This was first agreed upon in the initial approval of the project when the Community Development Director, Jeff Pengilly, approved the project. And we also agreed that there was not any need to perform further environmental review for this project under CEQA sections 15.162 through 15.164, which do address subsequent documents to an EIR, as well as section 15.183, which allows a project consistent with a specific plan and zoning to not undergo further environmental review under CEQA. So I'll dive into these sections a little bit more as I explain the adequacy of the CEQA and the lack of merit in the appellant's comment letter. So the CEQA for this project starts with addendum number 15, which was conducted for the most recent River Park specific plan amendment. This addendum and the specific plan amendment was approved by City Council on April 5th, 2022. The Planning Commission also reviewed the addendum and the amendment on December 16th, 2021 and January 13th, 2022, in which they recommended approval of both the environmental document and the amendment to City Council. This specific plan amendment is where the additional jump in the roughly 1,200 units comes from, as we got questioned about that a few times. And I want to emphasize that this was at the expense of a significant amount of commercial area. So while it has been portrayed in some of the comment letters that there was a 45% increase in the residential, there was a significant decrease in the commercial. So it wasn't just a 45% increase of residential on top of everything already. It was balanced out. This addendum was certified in 2022 and directly assessed this property for 280 of those additional units. The addendum studied the effects of the residential being built in place of that commercial development, which was already allowed by the specific plan. And I want to point out again that the residential is replacing the commercial, and that's what was studied. The impacts of the residential versus the impacts of what the commercial would have been. So this property was already outlined to be heavily developed under the River Park specific plan and the original EIR. The studies conducted as part of the addendum that was certified in 2022 also showed that there were no new significant impacts when the two scenarios were compared, and in fact, many of the impacts associated with the commercial development lessened with the residential build-out option that was approved as part of the specific plan amendment. It's been asserted by the appellant and questioned by others, why is a 20-year-old EIR supporting this project? And it's because of the addenda, and in this case primarily addendum number 15, that this project is covered by the environmental review, as addendum number 15 has evaluated this site, as I just explained, going through the residential impacts versus the commercial impacts. So this addendum and the other 14 that were done before it have become part of the EIR. I want to throw out the notion that this project is being assessed with over 20-year-old studies and 20-year-old views of the impacts, as that is not true. It is through the addendum that the studies were conducted covering this site, again, for the 280 unit build out and evaluating it environmentally in the current context. And it is due to that specifically that a project-specific EIR, which has been called upon, is not needed. The site was already environmentally evaluated in today's developed river park context, and it was shown with all the studies to have no new significant impacts. Therefore, we can reasonably say the project site has not changed substantially since the addendum was performed, as well as under the original EIR. The site was completely graded as part of the initial implementation of the River Park specific plan. A vital piece to this hearing is the addendum had a 30-day challenge period in which anyone could have challenged the adequacy of the document, the studies, or if the addendum was the appropriate subsequent document. However, no one, including the appellant, chose to make a challenge allowing this addendum to be cemented. So, with this process being formally closed, the adequacy of that document is no longer available to be opened up and challenged. With the addendum being certified and made official, and the clear lack of change in the property, we were able to comfortably evaluate the project for consistency with the specific plan, which established the project's consistency with the addendum and the EIR. The project was found completely consistent with the density that was allowed. As I said, it was for 280 units. The project is also for 280 units. All the bedroom counts align, and all the development standards are met within the specific plan. And also, there's consistency with the 2030 general plan. Therefore, again, not necessitating further environmental review. We've reviewed the comment letter that was also received by each of you. I believe it was 73-page comment letter from the appellant. And again, we feel no differently about our recommendation and the adequacy of the environmental determination of this project. But I did want to respond briefly just to the primary points of that letter, which I believe was just section A. And so that's regarding section 15.162 and section 15.183. The appellant claims that those do not apply. However, staff feels that holds no merit. First off, they claim in their letter that section 15.162 does not mention addenda, but the assertion that addendums are not relevant and that section 15.162 does not mention addenda at all, as quoted from their comment letter, holds no merit. Because in section 15.162B, it is said, and this is quoted right from the CEQA guidelines, if changes to a project or its circumstances occur, or no new information becomes available after adoption of a negative declaration, the lead agency shall prepare a subsequent EIR if required under subdivision A. Otherwise, the lead agency shall determine whether to prepare a subsequent negative declaration, an addendum, or no further documentation. And obviously, as I outlined, the city chose to prepare an addendum feeling that was the appropriate subsequent document. Furthermore, an addendum would need to be consistent with section 15.162 of the CEQA guidelines as section 15.164, which is regarding addendums specifically, subjects addendums to section 15.162 through A, B, and E of section 15.164. The city, as the lead agency, felt that an addendum was an appropriate subsequent environmental document to the EIR, which is evidenced in the addendum, as well as evidence by the studies that were supplied and the lack of evidence that support there was any new significant impacts or new substantial information that the environment has significantly changed. The addendum could have been challenged by anyone who felt the addendum was not an appropriate document for the specific plan amendment. However, addendum number 15 was not challenged by anyone, again, including the appellant. So addendum number 15 is consistent with section 15162 as required by the CEQA guidelines. The appellant also mentioned section 15183 does not apply. However, section 15183 says if a project is consistent with a specific plan and zoning, then it can be carried out without further project-specific environmental review. The addendum prepared with the specific plan amendment provided environmental review for 280 units specifically on this property. And the EIR this addendum is attached to studied the full development of River Park and creation of the River Park specific plan, which includes full commercial development on this parcel. Therefore, the project does not need to undergo project-specific environmental review, as it would be covered under the addendum and EIR through its consistency with the specific plan. The appellant has brought up various impact sections within CEQA, as you might have noticed, such as noise, biology, transportation, and air quality. I want to emphasize with the addendum being certified and made official without any challenge, including no challenge from this appellant, these sections of the environmental review cannot be reopened for judgment. I have compiled information regarding these comments and these 4 sections, but without its relevance in this case, I don't feel the need to really detail those further unless called upon by the commission. Additionally, staff received questions from some of the commission during the week. Therefore, I wanted to finish by just addressing that these I think that's all I have, actually. No, I'm sorry about that. So I just had a little bit more to address some of the questions I didn't cover already from the commission, and that's firstly, an EIR does not expire or have a predetermined time limit. The amount of time passed can open the door and increase the likelihood that subsequent documents are needed in order to address changes in the environment. However, if the appropriate document is prepared or if evidence is not able to support that the project environment is substantially different, then the original EIR can either hold up as is or be the base document to a subsequent document such as an addendum, which was prepared in this case. With the original EIR covering a full build-out of River Park and that development being ongoing since, the city felt an addendum to replace commercial on this property with residential was an appropriate way to study the impacts and comply with CEQA. Furthermore, in the addendum, the impacts of the residential development were studied against the commercial development it could replace. No impacts were shown to be newly significant, as well as many of the impacts, namely transportation and air quality, were shown to decrease. There is no outright definition that definitely establishes what a significant impact is. Section 2168 of the CEQA guidelines provides the definition for significant effect on the environment as follows. A substantial or potentially substantial adverse change in the environment. But what establishes the significance of an impact are what the reports measure, observe, or predict in relation to development of a project compared to a baseline, or whether or not mitigation measures can be created to address anything determined as significant impacts in the reports. So I just want to emphasize one last time, we aren't opening the addendum up for scrutiny as it has been certified and made official. If there are disagreements with the way impacts were studied in the addendum, then it should have been challenged during that window of opportunity. This includes the appellant trying to address those 4 impact areas that they are claiming they have issues with in the addendum: biology, noise, air quality, and transportation. And with the parcel not changing significantly environmentally and no new substantial information coming to light since the addendum was conducted, there is no reason to analyze the project again with a project-specific environmental review. And then I just wanted to add that it was pointed out that one of the slides, which would be slide number 11, of the within the packet, it did say has been shown to have significant impacts. It just was a typo. It just said no new significant. And that's all I have for just summarizing. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Greatly appreciate all the details with the questions from the commissioners from before and all the responses and just detail with the public comments that came in. So thank you very much. Before I move on to the appellant and the applicant presentations, I'm just going to remind the commission, I think this is our first time in a while, or if ever, to have an appeal. So I just want to remind the commission that we're going to have the appellant present. They will choose a portion of the 15 minutes that we're going to allow to them, and then the applicant is going to have 15 minutes to present, and then the appellant, whatever time that they reserve, will have the balance of that 15 minutes for rebuttal, and then we'll go through the usual. When we have the questions, it can be to the applicant, appellant, or the staff, but everything else should remain the same, more or less. So at this time, we're going to have the appellant present and then the applicant, if there is any. And so I'll look and see if there is an appellant to present or to talk for their presentation.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Before I'll start your time, if you could let the commission know what amount of the 15 minutes that we currently have reserved for both the applicant and the appellant each, but for you, how much time do you want to reserve for rebuttal?
Probably 5 minutes for rebuttal.
Thank
So,
you.
Total
So-
of 15.
Yes,
5 for
so
rebuttal.
we'll do 10 minutes now, 15 minutes for the applicant, and then 5 minutes for the rebuttal. Okay, thank you very much. I'll wait for the Madam Secretary to get it to 10 minutes, and then you will have 10 minutes when she is ready for that.
Okay.
Thank you. And as she gets the 10 minutes ready, just a reminder to state your name for the record, and we can begin when you're ready.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Joseph Gonzalez. I'm an attorney out of Westlake Village. I represent SAFER in this appeal. And, you know, there are a couple of things that are a little bit confusing. One is I think the biggest question is whether the addendum itself, whether there's a new item there that would be subject to CEQA review. And the EIR itself was created in 2002, which is a very long time. So our concern is that in addition to the length of time, there may have been an addendum prior to this, but there's a reason why the council is making a determination today. That obviously wasn't taken care of in 2002. there were changes, and in 2022, this is a whole new CEQA review. And so that's why we have concerns on noise, biology, air quality, and so forth. Those things have not been reviewed by the council as of, this hearing date. And there apparently will not be any further review by the council. And we think that this violates CEQA. And the way it violates CEQA is that there's a pretty clear legal standard here, and I'm just going to point out the CEQA guidelines section 1562 and 64, where it states, it must be remembered that an addendum is prepared where only minor technical changes or additions are necessary to make the EIR under consideration adequate. And the changes to the EIR made by the addendum do not raise important new issues about the significant effects on the environment. Now, it doesn't mean that there has to be a significant effect. There's a potential significant effect. And when you're going from commercial to human habitation, that is significant. And that's part of why I think the addendum is here today. But it is also why we believe that this addendum requires further CEQA review. Commercial is a different thing. We think of commercial and we say, oh, there's potential toxic exposure in a commercial endeavor. There's a whole bunch of other things that go along with commercial endeavor, but those things also may increase dangers associated with human habitation. And in this case, we're talking about a 2002 EIR that doesn't even cover the most up-to-date biological impacts that might be associated with this addendum. So we respectfully object, and we do not believe that the statute of limitations is over simply because we are here tonight in this rainy weather talking about an addendum that has significant, or may have significant impacts on the environment. May be a great project. We just don't know because we haven't had up-to-date informational review on this. As stated, the initial EIR, which is the subject of this case, was certified in 2002, which means that it may have been going on for a while back then. So we're talking about 1999 or some other dates where information was put together. It's very outdated when we're talking about a 2025 issue. The 2022 issue, which I believe that my colleague talks about, says that foregoes any objection to further CEQA review. We have to disagree, otherwise there wouldn't be a new CEQA document being prepared. There wouldn't be there are no new sets of information being prepared, and human habitation is very different than commercial use. Commercial use is generally not 24/7. It has a different set of standards in terms of human impact, biological diversity, noise, parking, all of those things contribute to a potential significant impact. Now, the impact may not be hugely significant, but we don't know that at this moment, and that's why we are requesting that you deny this new project or require further review for potential significant impacts. So now, going back to CEQA guidelines, section 15183, and section 21083.3, it states that, and this is regarding to an adopted general plan, if a development project is consistent with the general plan of a local agency and an environmental impact report was certified with respect to that general plan, the application of this division to the approval of that development project shall be limited to effects on the environment which are peculiar to the parcel or the project and which were not addressed as significant impacts in the prior environmental impact report, or which substantial new information shows will be more significant than described in the prior environmental impact report. So here we have, again, a 2002 EIR, and then 2022, some sort of report, but none of them really addresses effects on the environment. And this is why we request further review. Furthermore, pursuant to CEQA, various limits on the applicability of Public Resolution Code Section 21083.3, some aspects of a project may be exempt from CEQA, while other aspects of the project may require some level of CEQA review. We respectfully request that the council recognize that there is a potential for significant impact on people, a significant impact on noise, significant impact on air quality, and a significant impact on biology, which is biological entities such as frogs and different types of biologic entities that are just either different now prior to the 2002 environmental impact, or have been shown to be different. There are new things popping up every year that we didn't know about when we did the initial environmental impact review. And there's been no effort to discuss or present information specific to the site with respect to human habitation, biology, air noise, and traffic. And that, we believe, is the problem with this decision, or the proposed decision. And we leave it up to you, but we would appreciate a little bit more information.
Thank you, Mr. Gonzalez. We'll now move on to the applicant, if they are here or on Zoom. I believe it's Zoom. Oh, they are here in person. Thank you. And you will have 15 minutes. If you could pause for a second while we get there, and you can begin when ready.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. I'm Tony Locacciato, a partner with Meridian Consultants, resident of Oxnard. My office is at 860 Hampshire Road, Westlake Village. I've had the privilege of being the city's primary environmental review consultant on the River Park project since 2000. Managed preparation of the original EIR and a majority of those 15 addendums, including addendum number 15. As was stated in Mr. Houck's presentation, There was full analysis of every topic. And what's important and was overlooked in the appellant's presentation to you just now is Section 15164 CEQA guidelines says an addendum is appropriate unless there's a new significant impact or a substantial increase in the severity of an impact already identified in the prior EIR due to either changes to the project or changes to the circumstances under which the project occurred. So the way the city structured the analysis in each of these addendum, updated information was provided on the existing conditions, so that updated the information on circumstances under which the project would occur, and there was full quantitative or qualitative analysis of the change. So all that information was in the addendum, so to state that the city is relying on 2002 EIR, that there's been no assessment of the change in conditions just doesn't reflect that the addendum's actually been reviewed. As Mr. Houck pointed out, there was quantitative analysis for air quality, noise, traffic that looked at River Park as a whole, all 700 acres of mixed use with the commercial that was already allowed. There was a 562,000 square foot reduction in commercial on the land where the 1,250 additional multifamily units were allowed through the amendment. This actually resulted in a reduction in air quality emissions, a reduction in traffic volumes, because the original EIR didn't consider vehicle miles traveled, which has been our metric for determining significance of transportation impacts since 2020. Quantitative analysis of vehicle miles traveled was in addendum number 15 that again showed a reduction of 7 million vehicle miles traveled per year when you take out 562,000 square feet of commercial and add 1,250 apartments. The noise analysis, it was a mixed-use project. The analysis applied and all the mitigation applied. With regard to biological impacts, this property was graded. It is cleared on a regular basis. It's surrounded by existing development. It doesn't contain significant habitat of value. All that's out there are common species that you would see in River Park and in the surrounding community. So again, the city is relying on the EIR as thoroughly updated through the series of addendums, including addendum number 15. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Locacciato. We'll move back to the appellant, Mr. Gonzalez, and you have 5 minutes. Thank you, and you can begin.
Thank you. So obviously, we disagree with the statement that there has been an addendum EIR which covers today's hearing. Again, why would we have a hearing today if everything was covered? That's firstly. Secondly, when we're talking about general things that occur in the park, that's what they are. They're general observations. I don't know why anybody would necessarily disagree with something if it's trying to make something better, which it may. But what we don't know is really a realistic baseline of what that property or that project is at this moment in time, and that's why we have an addendum, because we're transferring from something that is commercially used commercially to something that's used by people and cars and different types of noises and actually different biological entities. And they may not be new biologic entities. They may be entities that we just know about now that we didn't know about before. So that's where it comes in to play here under CEQA. It's not just whether something is different right now, and we know it's different. It's whether we learn about something new. And that's why we have experts to opine on this issue. And that is why we believe that right now the objection is timely because the project is different. And the objection is also timely because we believe there might be a significant impact. Not that there is, we're not saying the sky is falling. We're saying there might be a significant impact. And as such, the CEQA as an informational document is there to make sure that all decisions are well informed, and to the extent there are any major impacts if those are discovered. And I can tell you, having done environmental law for over 20 years, there are plenty of sites where things are built on, and then you learn that somebody dug a hole somewhere, and all of a sudden there's some other environmental impact that wasn't known at the time, but is now known. And that is because sometimes environmental review was not appropriate at that time. And, you know, you've got off-gassing into human habitability. You've got the impacts of, you know, different types of biology. There are a whole bunch of things to consider. And again, I'm not trying to say everything is a problem or there even is a problem, just that, number one, the objections are timely and they're set out in the document by Mr. Drury, as well as the experts that provided their opinion there. And number two is that we believe that the scope of the project, because no CEQA document has been completed for this particular project, we believe that the project is not exempt from CEQA. Finally, there's some statements that the project is actually going to be better than what was there before with this by passing this addendum. Respectfully, we disagree that that's something that has been shown. The baseline hasn't been fully analyzed, and it doesn't have to be just the baseline from the 2002 EIR or even the addendum in 2022. The baseline must be established properly in this particular case in 2025, February 6, 2025. And we don't believe that the addendum, as a properly discussed EIR, has been exhausted. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gonzalez. That concludes our presentation from the applicant and the appellant at this time, unless there's a further motion from commission to have them repeat or to give them more time. But for now, we'll move on to questions by the commission to either the applicant, the appellant, and/or staff. I'm going to recommend, but I'm not going to mandate that you try to do applicant, appellant, and our staff like in sections, unless with your questioning, it's going to go through all of them at once. And consider if you have a lot of questions, maybe capping it at 15 minutes at this time. There's no limit on questions, but just to give it a few rounds. I don't know how that's going to go. So I just know that in previous, we've kept it to 10 or 15 minutes, waited for another round, and then went again with more questions. So at this time, I'm going to ask commission if they have questions of the applicant, appellant, and our staff, and please be specific who you're directing your question to. Commission. I'll start off with a couple of questions. This is to staff. I don't know if it's going to be to Mr. Hook or to Mr. Rozelle. Both the applicant and the appellant are, in my opinion, fighting over the meaning and the definition of what an addenda does and whether it's needed. And it seems like that seems to be the crux, that the addenda was either sufficient enough, and so this project will likely stands to be approved because the addenda was enough or the addenda was insufficient, and that there really does need to be a new environmental review. And so I know the city's position, but I will ask for a more clear, clarified, or detailed definition of what the last addenda actually does in regards to this project. Thank you, Mr. Pearson. So sorry to leave you out of that group. So thank you.
No worries. So Chair Rejo, I can respond to that. I think first the question of like what the question is before the commission today is really whether or not this project is consistent with the River Park specific plan, which was analyzed under that addendum. So again, the question today is really if that project is consistent with that, then that environmental review, which was conducted as part of that addendum, was completed and that challenge period has ended. So the question of whether or not the addendum was adequate was the question that was before the commission and ultimately the city council back in 2001 and 2022 when that was recommended for approval by the commission and ultimately approved by the city council. And again, as Mr. Haupt mentioned, there were no challenges presented at that point in time. So the addendum itself ultimately analyzed all of the changes going from the commercial, as Mr. Bacchiato, sorry, I'm going to mispronounce your name, mentioned, it reduced the amount of square footage in the project basically by over 500,000 square feet to allow for the residential. So it was looking at that change from the commercial to the residential. So there was that trade-off, and what the addendum did was it analyzed what the River Park build-out would be as it was approved, and ultimately they could build out that project with the additional 500,000 square feet without any additional environmental review, and essentially looked at what the impacts would be for that versus if they traded out that square footage and then put in the additional, I believe a little over 1,000 additional residential units. So that's what the addendum looked at. It looked at that change between those two and looked at whether or not there would be any additional impacts. And it also did prepare studies, so there's an additional traffic study, air quality studies, that all brought it up to today's standards. So it looked at, the traffic study was done based on today's standards. The air quality study was done based on today's standards. And again, still compared those two. So it was looking at it as the environment exists or existed at that point in time in 2021 when the document was being prepared. So again, going back to the original question, which is ultimately what's before the commission today, is whether or not this project is consistent with that prior document for which the addendum and certified EIR was prepared.
Thank you, Mr. Person. Let's see. A follow-up again to staff, not a follow-up to that question, a new question. It appears that that the last addenda, at least by the appellant's argument, is that it's not sufficient or that they disagree with it's the wrong word, but the legitimacy of it. Is there recourse then to challenge it in the court system? I know that's a hypothetical answer, but it will provide me some options or some clarification for other questions that I have.
Happy to address that. The issue is that the 15th addenda actually already addressed this conversion of this property from commercial to residential. So that issue was actually done in the addenda. So time has passed, but that has not changed from that point in time. So before you, of course, is to make a finding that it is consistent with the addenda that was prepared for this very project. If you find it's not, then you should deny. But based on the evidence in the record right now, this project is consistent with the 15th addenda. Assuming that you approve, there's going to be the possibility the appellant could bring an action, and that is well within their rights. But based on the evidence in the record at this point in time, this project is consistent with that 15th addenda, and it's appropriate for you to make the finding of consistency.
Thank you, Mr. Zhao. My next questions are to the appellant, Mr. Gonzalez. My first question is just a curiosity. I don't know if it's a curiosity only, but you said that you're representing SAFER. Can you just give us a brief description of what SAFER is or does?
Sure, it's a 501c3, it's a nonprofit group. I'm an attorney who represents various nonprofit groups amongst other individuals. I used to be the lead attorney for a law firm, Masry and Vitito, which they made into a movie at one point, the Aaron Brockovich movie. And so I've reviewed a lot of documents involving sites that are closed and sites that don't necessarily review items such as migration and all the other things that are listed. So yes, basically the expert safer I've worked with him for, I don't know, 20 years, Dr. Rosenfeld, who's with SAFER, and the concerns that they have are water contamination, vapor intrusion from off-gassing from chemicals that weren't previously taken a wider look at in terms of stuff that's in the soil, stuff that's in the environment, stuff that people cover up, barrels that people dump, those kinds of things, and more. So there's a review of the biology, and everything's updated yearly under CEQA.
Thank you for that, Mr. Gonzalez. And my second question to you is, so reading through your 70-plus page letter with the 4 different sections in regards to the analysis of biology, noise, and the other 2, it doesn't, at least for me, it appears that you basically just want more information, but in your opinion, with the information that you have right now with the analysis, are you wanting the Planning Commission or the City Council to reject the project outright, or you're just looking for more information?
I think it's the more information that's done, and it needs to be applicable to a certain set of questions and issues. I think that would be appropriate. Now, whether, how that is formulated, I think needs to be done with a certain type of documentation and questions answered. Otherwise, I don't understand why we are doing a new addendum if everything was done before. So yes, the short answer is number 2, I think the appropriate thing would be to not pass or hold off on this particular addendum and allow time for further review.
Thank you. And my last question is, as was stated and or asserted by staff and the applicant maybe, but definitely by staff, why didn't SAFER oppose the last addenda? Because that seems to be, at least in my opinion, most, if not the entire reason for having, for this project to be approved or not. I think that probably, given the legal explanation and the description in our packets, that probably would have been the best way to get what you needed or wanted.
That's a very, very good question. So are you I'm sorry to ask a question, but I think we're referencing the 2022?
Yes, that's correct. The one from 2.5 years ago.
Right.
That I believe went through this planning commission too. So at least 2, I forgot if Commissioner Nash was also on for that one too. But yes, I think it would have been more appropriate, at least from the questions and the arguments that you're making. And so if that's so, then we probably shouldn't be here for this round. At least it came too late, it's looking like.
Right, so statute of limitations and whether or not the 2022 addendum was the appropriate recourse. And then why are we doing 2025, which is my first question, because now we have an addendum. Now, what happened in that first addendum, there's a lot of statements saying it is consistent with certain things. So it may be consistent, but it's not specifically reviewed under this addendum. And that's why we're having a different addendum. And whether somebody understood what was going on in 2022 or didn't understand, you know, we agree, but it obviously wasn't reviewed to the furthest extent under CEQA. And also, we don't believe that this addendum does not trigger a new statute of limitations. The old one, that may be gone. There's maybe a statute of limitations on that. And it, you know, there's an argument as to whether or not that addendum and the 2002 EIR are consistent with an overall plan, which they may be, but it doesn't mean that the potential significant impacts aren't fleshed out in 2025.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gonzalez. Those are my questions at this time. I'm looking to Commissioner. Mr. Pearson.
Sorry, Reho, if I could just add one clarification, which is there's not a new addendum being prepared here. The addendum was, the addendum which we're referring to, addendum 15, was the addendum that was prepared in 2022. And this project in the River Park specific plan, the changes associated with it, were all based on that addendum. Today, there's no new addendum being presented to the commission, and essentially we're just saying that this project is consistent with that prior addendum.
Acknowledged. Thanks for that confirmation. Again, looking to commission for any further questions of the applicant, appellant, or staff. Commissioner Nash.
Thank you, Chair. So I want to address a potentially significant impact, and I would like staff to respond in regards to the traffic study that was done, 20 plus years ago. Are you still comfortable that that traffic study is valid today?
So, Commissioner Nash, as part of that addendum that was prepared in 2022, or in 2021, and ultimately approved in 2022, there was an updated traffic analysis that was prepared for that project. So, again, we're not necessarily referring back to the data that was in just that 2002 document. As we've done the addendums over the years, that information has been updated to reflect current conditions. So again, the study that was done in 2021, I believe is when the actual study was done, was based on the analysis at that point in time and the traffic at that point in time. So yeah, there hasn't been, we're not going back to rely on that older document. Obviously, that was 2021, and we do feel that that information is still adequate enough for today's project.
And the reason I ask is because this is sort of my neck of the woods, so I'm pretty familiar with the impacted intersections. I'm speaking primarily of Town Center Drive and Oxnard Boulevard and the northbound 101 off-ramp onto Oxnard Boulevard. So I already see, I witness conditions that, if not gridlock, certainly would potentially lead to gridlock with the addition of, not only the 280 units from the point, but also the other project on Ventura Road. So I just want to make sure that the city is comfortable with the ramifications of these developments and the increase in. I know that we can't look at level of service anymore on particular intersections, which is kind of a shame because that's exactly what I think we need to do, because that's where you get the log jams and everything, especially people trying to enter the collection at Town Center Drive. That's already backed up to Oxnard Boulevard sometimes. So I just want to make sure that the city is comfortable in its reliance upon the traffic study from what you mentioned.
So Commissioner Ness, I can respond to that. So I guess first, the city does still look at level of service as part of their like general plan consistency. So our traffic division says still look at that for projects. It is not a CEQA issue anymore. So CEQA looks at transportation impacts from the VMT or vehicle miles traveled. So it is no longer a CEQA thing. However, our traffic division does still look at level of service because we do have general plan policies that rely on that. So it is still part of the analysis, and it was still looked at as part of this. Also, part of the traffic analysis also, again, kind of goes back to that initial aspect of they were able to build out an additional 500,000 plus square feet. I believe it's on page 4 of the staff report that shows kind of the trade-off that had to occur. So the additional traffic that this project would be bringing was already accounted for because the commercial development that hadn't been built yet would have brought that additional traffic. And as mentioned earlier, it showed that with this residential, the total amount of traffic would actually be less than it would have been with the amount of commercial that was being built out. And that was one of the main focuses of that addendum. I worked on that project. So one of the main things that we worked through on that addendum was making sure that there would be no greater impacts as a result of adding this additional residential. So, if you look at the numbers, they're very deliberate in terms of the amount of square footage that was taken out for each additional unit that was being provided. The number of units were limited. The types of units were also limited in terms of the number of 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms that were in each of those projects. So it was very much looked at as part of that addendum that was prepared.
Thank you. I do want to ask you one further question. And this was a question I submitted to staff. In his comment letter, Wilson Irig writes, in the absence of city noise ordinance, construction noise daytime limits, the applicant should set thresholds based on other similar documents. There clearly is some level where permanent hearing damage, extreme annoyances, and other adverse effects would occur from construction noise, even considering its short-term nature. For example, the County of Los Angeles Code has a construction noise limit of 75 dBA. And he maintains that the city of Oxnard does not have such an ordinance. Is that correct?
So, Commissioner Nash, we do have noise standards for, not necessarily for construction. For construction, it usually relies on limiting the hours of construction to certain timeframes, which I believe are in the conditions of approval. That limits, again, so that you're not doing construction at night. Generally, construction noise is considered to be a short-term impact, and obviously, I'm sure when they do the construction, they try to minimize that as much as possible, but as far as I'm aware, at least at this point, we do not have a specific limit on construction noise, but I can double check and get back to the commission with certainty if the commissioners would like.
Is this something that the city is interested in rectifying, or no?
I'm not aware of that. I would have to look into that and follow up with you.
Okay, thank you. That's all.
Thank you, Commissioner Ness. Any others from the commission? Seeing and hearing none, we'll move on to public comment. Madam Secretary, is there any public comment that has been additionally submitted to you?
No, Chair.
Thank you. Right now, I'm looking at a speaker card. It was for Mr. Gonzalez, but that was for the appellant. But I'm seeing to connect Dr. Rosenfeld. Is that correct? Yes. Okay. We're going to look if anyone and/or Dr. Rosenfeld is on Zoom right now, and request that you *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute. And that applies to anyone, including Dr. Rosenfeld. Okay. I think if there's no objection, I'm gonna close, well, not gonna close the public comment. I'm gonna look to staff for any closing remarks, go back to Zoom, and then close the public hearing. So staff, is there any closing remarks?
I have just one small thing to add that maybe we haven't thought much about is the addendum was certified in 2022, and we're here in 2025 thinking about this project, but the project was submitted in 2023, so it did directly follow the approval of the addendum. It's not as if it waited 3 years and you know, it's just everything's been following in line procedurally as normal development does. And it does take time for us to process those entitlements, go through the studies. As Mr. Pearson said, the traffic division had to study everything. Well, that was submitted, that takes time. And that's why we are here 3 years or 2.5 years after the certification of the addendum.
Thank you very much. I'll look one last time to the Madam Secretary if anybody has raised their hands.
No, Chair.
Thank you very much. And now I will close the public hearing and move on to deliberation. Commission. Commissioner Nash.
Thank you, Chair. I do want to say that I was sensitive to some of the issues raised in the letter from the appellant, because I think that things do change over 20-plus years, even with addendums. But I am willing to, I do follow the logic of what the city and the applicant have stated. The time frame for, putting forth an objection to the EIR and its addendums have passed. So I think that at this point, I'm a little reluctant to say that the exchange of residential for commercial is equivalent, especially when it comes to the types of trips that are generated. I do foresee traffic problems in that one corridor on Oxnard Boulevard. But that's something that will have to be resolved by the owners, operators of the collection, because ultimately it impacts the businesses within the collection. And of course, we all want to see the collection, be as accessible as possible. So I'm willing to support staff's recommendation at this time. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Commissioner Nass. Any others from the commission? Commissioner Dr. Lopez.
Echo Commissioner Nash's comments. I think to add to him, though, I can't think of another major development project, specific plan, village that has been more scrutinized for a quarter of a century now, and so although I do appreciate the appeal coming forward to us, I have to say very much that I would probably feel a little different if this room was full of folks from River Park opposing this item. I would perhaps have more of a pause if that was the case. But just looking at what River Park has developed to be not only for many families in our community, in terms of, aside from housing, but just I think of the, and I may have shared this back in 2022, thinking about the wealth that it has provided for individuals and families of Oxnard with the investments that they've made. I, as one commissioner, just kind of feel like I'm glad that the developers of River Park have never given up on the promise of what that project could be and what it could be to the residents of Oxnard who care deeply about any change or challenge brought to them, and there have been many over the decades. And so I too feel like Commissioner Nash in support of the recommended action, and if he makes the motion or made the motion, I would be happy to second.
Thank you, Commissioner Dr. Lopez. For myself, I was really harping or really delving into the issue of the addenda and really whether it the efficacy, the legitimacy serves as an appropriate foundation for the project. And based on everything that I've read and everything that I've heard and seen, I have to say it does. And so for me, the project was already in compliance with that addenda, in my opinion, and that didn't change. And so I need to delve into whether the addenda was good enough, and I feel that it's legally good enough. It went through this planning commission and through city council, and it wasn't the first addenda, and we've had an addenda, and I forgot who put the words, if it was the applicant or staff, that each addenda sets a new foundation or baseline to do future projects based on that. And of course, the plan can always be changed by another addenda, and so the appropriate reviews are going to be made. And so I can't see a reason to reject staff's recommendation at this time. That's all my comments right now, and I'll move to commission if they have any further deliberation, and if not, a motion would be in order. Sorry, Commissioner Nash.
I move the recommended action.
It has been moved by Commissioner Nash to find the project to be consistent with FEIR number 00-03 and subsequent addendums prepared for the River Park specific plan and therefore exempt from further environmental review pursuant to sections 15-162 through 164 and 15-183 of the CEQA guidelines, and adopt a resolution denying the appeal and upholding the Community Development Director's approval of Planning and Zoning Permit number 23-200-01, Development Design Review Permit, subject to certain findings and conditions, because the record shows that there is evidence necessary to make all of the findings required by Oxnard City Code. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Dr. Lopez. Any further deliberation on the motion before us? Seeing and hearing none, Madam Secretary, come with the roll call, please.
Commissioner Nash.
Aye.
Commissioner Dr. Lopez.
Aye.
Commissioner Schuelke.
Aye.
Chair Arejo.
Aye.
This motion passes.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. If I was going to suggest maybe a recess, but I think since we're close to the end of our meeting, we'll move on to Section G, study session reports. With non-agendized, moving to Planning Commission business. Planning Commission, do we have any business to report? Commissioner Dr. Lopez.
Just comment on some activity I've seen across town on projects that have come before us. I was even at the new In-N-Out earlier today off of Rose Avenue near the auto dealerships, and how efficient that seems to be going for folks. I know that when it came before us, there was some concern about just the traffic flow given the lines that form at some of their other establishments, but they have it down. I think, the handful of times I've been there, one of the shortest lines at any In-N-Out that I've been to anywhere. across the state for sure. And then right next door, they're building another Starbucks, which we also approved. And so it's going to be good to see those two businesses near completion. Across the freeway, I believe it's one of the set of apartments that we approved. Also, you see the frame coming up. And so just great to be able to see some of these projects that have come before us the last 4 years, either completed or near completion. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Dr. Lopez. Any others from the commission? I have a couple brief comments that I want to make. I just want to wish, this is our first meeting of the year, so Happy New Year to everyone, and great to see you all. As we start 2025, I want to publicly note my deep thanks to everyone for serving on the Planning Commission, spanning from those I've concurrently served with just in the past year, Commissioner Schuelke, to the past 4 years, Commissioner Dr. Lopez and Connolly, and everyone in between, Vice Chair Dr. Stewart, Commissioner Nash, and Zielsdorf. I've already noted this through email, blind copied, so just for Brown Act purposes and everything. But it can't be said enough. All of you have provided your own perspectives based on your lived experiences, educational upbringing, and your interpretation of the various guidelines, regulations, and laws that govern how we conduct ourselves, analyze documents, and decide on an action and recommendation in the best interest of the city that we live in and love, which is not always easy. We are able to disagree without being disagreeable, oppose an idea without opposing the member, and thoughtfully engage with each other without being superfluous or overly inefficient. How we interact with each other is not the norm, but is the ideal, and I think we have absolutely lived up to that, and it wouldn't be the worst if other bodies did the same. So thank you all, and I'm looking forward to our next meeting. So moving on, we'll go to Community Development Staff Update. Mr. Pearson.
Chair Reho and Commissioners, just a few updates, which is our next meeting will be on the 20th. And at that meeting, we currently have 2 alcohol permits for the new hotels that are being constructed, as well as the hotels up in the landing near River Park. So actually right across the street from the project that we heard today. And the sand management plan, which was continued from last year to the March 20th date, is also expected to return on that date. And then just in regards to the elections, just to, since it has been stated, per the bylaws, the elections are to be held basically upon the seating of the new members. So we're still waiting on the new members to be seated. So we may, depending on how long that takes, we may have to do it a little bit sooner, but ultimately that is currently what we're awaiting on to do the new elections. And with that, that's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Pearson. Ms. Roselle, any updates? I haven't asked you in a while.
I do. I wanted to announce this is my last Planning Commission meeting. Jason Zaragoza will be taking over, so I will be remaining with the city but doing other projects. So it's been a pleasure to work with the Planning Commission for 8.5 years. I did my first Planning Commission in January of 1993, so I've been doing this for a while. It's my pleasure to work with each one of you, and you will see my face from time to time on some of the projects that I still will be assisting with, but I just did want to say goodbye to each one of you officially tonight.
I'll say something, but I'll go. Commissioner Nash.
Thank you. You know, I was thinking about the collection and the point that the city and the Planning Commission, there is literally nobody who's been present from the beginning, but you have.
Yes.
So we have one person who has the institutional knowledge. So I find that great. You know, that there is actually somebody who has the institutional knowledge to keep us in check. So thank you. And
thank you.
Certainly, you know, thank you for your service. You've been a great asset to the Planning Commission. We certainly wish you luck in whatever endeavor you continue on with the city. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Commissioner Nash. Any others? Commissioner Schuelke.
I just want to thank you for your counsel and your public service. Glad you're still continuing on at the city. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. And for myself, I I was, for a couple seconds, you gave me a worry that we're leaving the city. I mean, at least on behalf of me, Commissioner Dr. Lopez and Connolly, we've known you the longest on this commission for this stint. And so it's going to be weird to not, other than Mr. Pearson, Mr. Colwick, and yourself, I mean, you three have been the ones I have most bothered with my question. So I really hope that it wasn't because any one of us or myself have scared you away, and we appreciate you coming back in whatever form that you want to come back to the Planning Commission, and so super glad, partially with what Commissioner Nash said on the institutional knowledge, and just for everything else that you've provided for this Planning Commission and all planning commissions since your first meeting. So greatly appreciate it, and look forward to seeing you sooner rather than later. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, we'll go to, since there's no further business, the meeting will be adjourned if there's no objection. The meeting is adjourned at 7:38 p.m.